Let me tell you something that happened to me that I still can't fully wrap my head around, even now, years later. I sat in a hospital waiting room, the kind with the bad fluorescent lighting and the chairs that are too hard to ever get comfortable in. And I called the insurance company. My wife, Dorothy, was in surgery. She had been diagnosed 8 months earlier, and we'd been fighting every single day since then. Fighting the disease, fighting the fear, fighting to keep things as normal as we could for the grandkids. But that phone call, that one phone call, broke something in me that the diagnosis itself never quite managed to break. The woman on the other end of the line was polite. Terribly, efficiently polite. She told me the claim had been reviewed and denied. She said there was a clause. There's always a clause, isn't there? She used words like pre-existing condition window and disclosure period and underwriting assessment. I'm 71 years old. I've been a school principal, a husband, a father, a grandfather. I have read more memos and policy documents than most people see in a lifetime. And I could not understand a single thing she was saying to me. All I knew, all that mattered, was that I had paid that company every single month for 35 years, never missed a payment, not once. And now they were telling me it didn't count. If that hits close to home, if you've ever felt like the system was designed to take your money and then disappear when you actually needed it, then please stay with me for this video. And if someone you love is in the middle of figuring out their insurance situation right now, do them a favor and send this to them. It might save them from what my family went through. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button down below. I'm going to keep talking about the things most people are too embarrassed or too tired to say out loud, because somebody has to. Here's the thing about life insurance that nobody tells you when you're young and signing the paperwork. When you're 35 years old and the agent is sitting across the kitchen table with his nice tie and his confident smile, the policy feels like a promise. It feels like a handshake deal, the kind your grandfather made and the kind that actually meant something. You pay us every month and we'll be there when your family needs us. That's what it felt like. That's what I believed. Dorothy and I got married in 1976. She was 23. I was 26. We didn't have much. I was teaching then, working toward my administrator's license, and she was doing bookkeeping part-time while we figured out our lives together. We weren't wealthy people. We were careful people. We saved what we could, we spent what we had to, and we tried to plan ahead because neither of us came from families that had anyone to bail them out. I took out that life insurance policy in 1981. Our first daughter had just been born. I remember the agent telling me it was the responsible thing to do, that a man with a family needed to make sure they were protected. And I believed him. I believed in the idea of it. The idea that love, real practical love, means making arrangements, means thinking about the people you'd leave behind, and doing something about it before it's too late. So I signed. And I paid. Month after month. Year after year. Long after the original agent had retired. Long after the company had been bought twice by bigger companies with different names on the letterhead. We raised 3 children in that house. We sent them to college. We buried Dorothy's mother and then my father, and we kept paying. When I retired from the school district in 2007, one of the first things I did was sit down and review all of our finances. I looked at that insurance policy and I felt something close to pride. 26 years of payments without a gap. I thought, whatever happens, Dorothy will be taken care of. That thought gave me peace. I held on to it. What I did not understand, what nobody sat me down and explained in plain language, was that the policy I had was not the policy I thought I had. Over the decades, as the company changed hands, there had been updates to the terms. Riders had been added, then removed. The coverage amounts had been adjusted during a refinancing I'd done on the house back in 1998. There was a health disclosure form from 2003 that I apparently had not filled out in sufficient detail when we switched to a new plan administrator. That form, that one form, would become the reason they denied Dorothy's claim. She had mentioned a hospitalization from 1999 to her regular doctor, but it had not made it into the new disclosure form because I hadn't known I was supposed to include it. It was a brief stay, a kidney infection, treated, resolved, nothing that had any bearing on what eventually happened to her. Nothing her doctors connected to her diagnosis, but the insurance company connected it. Their reviewers decided it was relevant. Their lawyers decided it justified a denial. I want you to understand how that feels. Imagine pouring 35 years of trust into something. Imagine making every payment on time because you're the kind of person who does things right, who honors his commitments. And then imagine being told that because of a paperwork technicality, a form you didn't even know existed, everything you'd built was worth nothing. That's not a financial loss. That's a betrayal. That's the kind of thing that makes an old man sit in a hospital waiting room and cry for the first time in 40 years. After the initial shock, I did what I was raised to do. I got up, I asked questions, I found a lawyer, a woman named Sandra, who specialized in insurance disputes, and I started fighting. And what I learned in that fight changed the way I see everything. It changed the way I think about contracts, about corporations, about the quiet little traps that are buried inside the documents we sign because we trust that the people asking us to sign them are acting in good faith. Sandra told me something in our first meeting that I've repeated to every person I know who will listen. She said, "The insurance company's job is not to pay claims. Their job is to collect premiums. Paying claims is a cost to them. They have entire departments dedicated to finding reasons not to pay." I'd been alive for 68 years at that point. I had been a school principal for 20 of them. I like to think I'm not a naive man, but I had never once thought about it that way. I had always assumed that insurance was, at its core, a mutually beneficial arrangement. I know better now. We appealed the denial. Sandra filed paperwork and I wrote letters. Long, detailed letters, because writing is something I know how to do. And we gathered medical records and we argued that the undisclosed hospitalization from 1999 was entirely unrelated to Dorothy's illness. The insurance company brought in their own medical reviewers. Their reviewers disagreed with her doctors. Of course they did. Their reviewers are paid to disagree. What I also learned during this time is that I was not alone. Not even close to alone. Sandra told me about a retired firefighter whose policy was denied because of a minor disclosure issue from 15 years prior. She told me about a woman whose husband had paid into a policy for 22 years and was denied on a technicality related to a job change that had been properly reported but filed under the wrong code. These were not isolated cases. These were patterns. Industries have patterns, and this one's pattern was becoming very clear to me. There are things you can do to protect yourself, and I wish someone had told me these things 30 years ago. First, and this is critical, you need to read your policy, not skim it. Read it. Every page, every rider, every amendment. If you can't understand something, don't let it go. Call the company and ask them to explain it in writing. Keep every correspondence. Create a folder, physical or digital, and put everything in it. Every letter, every email, every note from every phone call, including the date, the time, and the name of whoever you spoke with. Second, every single time your life changes significantly, a health event, a job change, a move, a refinancing, anything, contact your insurance company and ask them directly whether there's anything that needs to be updated or disclosed. Don't assume they'll tell you. They won't always. Ask. Get the answer in writing. Follow up if you don't. Third, if your policy has been transferred between companies or administrators at any point, treat the new arrangement as a brand new policy. Review everything from scratch. Ask specifically whether any prior disclosures carry over and whether any new ones are required. This is the step I missed. This is the one that cost us everything. Dorothy passed in the spring. I was with her. We had all 3 kids there and 4 grandchildren, and it was peaceful at the end in the way that people always say it is, but that you can never quite believe until you're living it. She was remarkable, that woman, 63 years old, and she faced the whole terrible business with more grace than I could have managed. More grace than I did manage, if I'm being honest. The lawsuit was settled 8 months later. I can't tell you the amount. Part of the agreement was a non-disclosure. But Sandra called it a good outcome. I called it something else entirely. It wasn't justice. Justice would have been the system working the way it was supposed to work in the first place. It was a settlement. It was a corporation deciding that further litigation was more expensive than writing a check. That's not the same thing as making something right. I'm telling you all of this because I believe somebody needs to. My generation, people my age, we were raised to believe that if you did things the right way, things would work out. You honor your commitments, you pay your bills, you trust the institutions, and the institutions hold up their end. I believed that. I really did. And I'm not entirely sure I was wrong to believe it, because I think most people who work inside those systems are trying to do their jobs honestly. But the systems themselves, the structures, the incentives, the fine print, those are built by people who have very different interests than you do. My son-in-law reviewed his life insurance policy the week after Dorothy passed. He found 2 things that needed to be updated. He made those changes. He got the confirmation in writing. That's not a small thing. That's the kind of thing that could mean the difference between his children being taken care of and his children going through what my children went through, watching their father fight a corporation while trying to grieve their mother at the same time. A friend from the old neighborhood, a retired electrician named Frank, called me a few months ago. His wife had just been diagnosed with something serious, and he was scared. Not just scared about her health, scared about money, about whether they were protected. I walked him through every question I could think of. We spent 2 hours on the phone going through his policy together. He found issues. He called his company. He's dealing with it now, while he still can, while there's still time to fix it. That phone call meant something to me. That's what I want this video to mean to someone watching right now. Because here's what I know now that I didn't know before. Insurance is not passive. You cannot sign a policy and put it in a drawer and assume it'll be there. It requires attention. It requires maintenance. It requires you to treat it like the important legal document it is, because it is one, whether you feel like engaging with it or not. The discomfort of sitting down and reading 40 pages of dense policy language is nothing compared to the discomfort of being told your claim is denied when your family needs it most. I also want to say something to anyone who's watching this and already in the middle of a denial. If a claim has been denied, don't accept it as final. Appeal it. Get an independent insurance attorney, not an advisor, an attorney who actually litigates these cases, and get them to review what happened. These companies count on people not fighting back. They count on grief and exhaustion and the overwhelming nature of loss to make you feel like you can't. But you can. Some battles are worth fighting even when you're tired. Some battles are worth fighting especially when you're tired. There are also state insurance commissioners, government offices in every state that regulate insurance companies and handle complaints. Filing a complaint with your state commissioner costs nothing and creates an official record. In some cases, it's enough to change a company's calculation about whether to keep fighting. Sandra told me she's seen denials reversed after a state commissioner inquiry alone. You have more tools than you think. Use them. I'm an old man. I've been a widower for 3 years now. The house is quieter than it used to be, and some mornings that quiet is very hard to be inside. But I'm still here. I'm still thinking. I'm still talking to people whenever I can about the things that matter. And this matters. What happened to Dorothy and me is not ancient history. It's happening to families right now, this week, in waiting rooms just like the one I sat in. People who did everything right, who paid faithfully for decades, who trusted a system that was not built with their trust in mind. So please, and I mean this with every bit of sincerity I have left in me, go find your policy tonight. Put it on the kitchen table. Read it. If you have a spouse or a partner, read it together. If you have adult children who you've named as beneficiaries, sit them down and go through it. Know what you have, know what it requires, know what could threaten it, and then take whatever steps you need to take to make sure that when the time comes, and for all of us, the time will come, your family doesn't have to sit in a hospital waiting room and hear the word denied. If this helped you in any way, if it made you think, if it made you pick up the phone, if it reminded you of something important, please subscribe to this channel. Leave a comment below and tell me if you've had an experience like this, or if you have questions. I read everyone. I may not always reply quickly because I'm old, and I type with 2 fingers, and I've earned the right to take my time, but I read them. You're not alone in this. None of us are. And as long as I can keep talking, I will.